Are you there, Alan?
I'm not there either.
Well, you nearly are, Gwen, because we can hear you. So,
Yes,
so,
good, good. Yes.
I'm sure Ali will sort the
Yes,
file. But
she
there you
has
go.
sorted it. Isn't she
Yeah,
good?
marvelous. So we've just got to find Alan.
And Donald?
Oh yeah.
I'm here, but the system won't let my video work.
Okay, that'll
Mhm.
happen. That'll happen. Hello, Alan. How are you?
Good, good.
Fantastic. Have you been watching proceedings?
I have been most of them.
Well done. Fantastic. So you're familiar with the process. So we've got your submission here, so we're in your hands.
Kia ora. Korua. My name is in the Ongri Point village, 10 kilometres from Katikati. From 1992 to 1998, I was a Western Bay councillor for the Katikati ward and an appointed member of the Katikati Community Board. The existing Katikati Community Board area has geographical integrity lying between the Kaimai Ranges and the sea and has many communities of interest shared by the urban and rural people. It attracts day visitors, but is not a holiday destination. As a child, I lived at Bonetown Ford, now part of Athenry, within what is now the Waihi Beach Community Board area. We went to school in Katikati by train and then by bus, but all our family travel for shops and services was to Waihi. This is still the situation, with virtually all Waihi Beach people having Waihi as their town of interest. This is partly because of distance, as Katikati is 20k from Waihi Beach, but Waihi is only 10k. Waihi Beach differs from Katikati in that it is a major New Zealand holiday destination with a large increase in population over the Christmas holiday period. But for 10 months of the year, it is a quiet seaside village with many vacant dwellings. This is in complete contrast to Katikati, which is a busy town on a major highway, the centre of major kiwi fruit and avocado industries. It has few vacant dwellings and has almost 3 times the population of Waihi Beach. Thus, I think the best representation arrangements for Katikati and Waihi Beach people is to continue to have 2 community boards able to deal with the different needs of the 2 areas. For example, Waihi Beach has long-term problems of coastal erosion and flooding that are not shared by Katikati. And also, I believe that to be effective as a community board member, the member must be in his community and be familiar with the problems of that community. And to have a Katikati community board, to ask a Katikati community board to be fully familiar with the Waihi Beach situation and the reverse is not realistic. I don't think that's a good idea. So I would strongly think that we should continue to have 2 community boards. Incidentally, I cannot understand why the council's final proposal suggests a combined community board with 3 members each for both Waihi Beach and Katikati. Even with 2 members, Waihi Beach would be overrepresented, as that would give a population member rating of 2,050 compared with the quota of 2,662. I believe that the council should delegate more to community boards, as at present Western Bay is one of the councils in New Zealand giving the least delegation to its boards. They would then be able to attract good candidates and better serve their communities. The Western Bay comprises diverse rural and urban communities spread along the coast between Waihi Beach and Pukahina, divided by the city of Tauranga. As a district, it has little unity, especially having its headquarters situated outside its boundaries. Consequently, I think that local representation and governance through community boards should be enhanced, not reduced as in the final proposal. I ask that the Commission decide that the 5 community boards be retained. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Alan. Thanks for those observations and that succinct summary. Can I just check in with you on your
Oops.
on your appeal? Sorry, you're right. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I lost you for a moment. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So in your appeal, there's just one paragraph I want to check up on, and now of course I've lost it. You made a comment that the decision was made in a confidential workshop. Right, here it is. So you're saying the final proposal was apparently conceived in a confidential workshop. There was no public consultation before it was debated. So I just want to clarify, the decision wasn't made, your understanding is the decision wasn't made in the workshop by way of a debate. The decision was made publicly. Is that correct? Is that how you
I'm not sure what the origins of the decision were, but the point I was trying to make is that it was not out for public consultation. It
Okay.
was too late for that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for clarity. Thank you. I'll just go to Commissioner Bigham. You're on mute.
Huh?
I'm on mute. My apologies.
Oh, there we are.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Alan, for your time and your former service to your district. I was interested in your submission. You talked about enhancing and strengthening the existing boards by giving them more delegations. What kinds of delegations would you think would achieve that?
I think delegation of decision-making about local issues so that when the council decides to proceed with something affecting the board area, the council would be advised in good time of the proposal and have a chance to perhaps modify it in the light of their local knowledge. And
So
also,
that's a bit different to having the delegation to make those decisions, though. What you're suggesting is
I think there always should be an opportunity for them to make decisions or make recommendations to council. Always the council should be free to accept proposals from the community boards on
Sure.
that something needs to be done here and there.
Wouldn't the community, like if 3 community boards were instigated, wouldn't they have the same ability to make recommendations as well?
No, I don't think so, because, for instance, in the case of Waihi Beach and Katikati being combined together, the Waihi Beach person would have, as it stands, would have very little knowledge of what's going in Katikati, particularly as his or her links for lots of stuff is Waihi. Katikati is not.
Sure, I understand where and this is a theme that we're hearing, that local people know local issues, but wouldn't that also give the opportunity for others who may be representing that community board to become advocates for those issues as well? And as I mentioned to a previous submitter, that community boards across the country often have geographically and in population-wise different people in different places, but they come together under one community board without too much problem. Why can't that happen in Western Bay is my question.
Well, I see less problem of it happening at the eastern end, because people in Pukahina and so on, they still regard Te Puke as their service town. That's the centre for services of that total area, but that's not the case in Western area, because Waihi Beach has Waihi as its service centre, and an elected person on a Waihi Beach community board only basically knows in detail about what's happening in Waihi Beach. There's such a contrast between the two areas, the two community board areas.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. I think
Yes, thank you. Just want to make it very clear, Mr. Goodyear, are you proposing that there should be two community boards, one for Katikati and one for Waihi Beach?
I am. I mean, that is, I think a combined one would be ineffective at our end of the district. Perhaps at the Te Puke end, it would work.
It is combined now, isn't it?
Well, Makatu is not in the Te
No.
Puke community board.
So right now you've got Katikati and Waihi Beach and Waihi in one local board.
No, we're separate.
So Waihi Beach is separate from Katikati.
Perhaps Keith Hay, who was on earlier, is a chairman of the Waihi Beach and Katikati Ratepayers Association. They're combined for his association, but in reality, what has been existing for decades is separate community boards, and there's been a very good reason for that.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for your observations. Appreciate the work you put in the background there, and we'll go to our deliberation in due course. Are you just clear? Do you hear me? Right, it's gone. Okay, thank you. So now we're going to the Amukaroa Residents and Ratepayers Association, Bruce McCabe, and that's on page 19. For those of us that are trying to keep up. So we'll just welcome Bruce. Kia ora, Bruce, welcome. Can you hear us all right? I'll just get you to go off mute. Perfect.
Right, we're in business.
You've seen the process so far. You're familiar with the boundaries in which we're engaging?
Yes, I am.
Brilliant. Okay, welcome, and we're looking forward to your observations. Summary of your observations.
Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. I am Dr. Bruce McCabe. I am the Chairman of the Amukaroa Residents and Ratepayers Association. As a representative of the Amukaroa community, I shall focus on our objection to, firstly, the proposed disestablishment of the Amukaroa Community Board. Secondly, the creation of a larger Kaimai Ward Community Board that includes an expanded Amukaroa subdivision, and the adverse effects this will have on local representation in Amukaroa. I then set out what I consider to be a more effective and equitable solution to the local representation in Amukaroa as defined by Section 19T of the Local Electoral Act. The proposed disestablishment of the Amukaroa Community Board came out of the blue at the end of the review process. It was not raised during consultation, was not included in the initial proposal, and was not at any stage discussed with the community. The Council has not provided any rationale for or identified any benefits to the Amukaroa community for this proposed change. During the 2018 representation review, Council proposed a similar change to local representation in the Kaimai Board. That is, the disestablishment of the Amukaroa Community Board and creation of a Kaimai Ward Councillor Committee that included Amukaroa. The Commission remained, and I quote, unconvinced and all of Kaimai Ward Committee could provide effective representation for the Aotearoa community and rejected this proposal. A councillor ward committee was trialled in about 2019 and it failed. It failed because of the different interests of the disparate rural and urban communities, the pressing need to put resources into Aotearoa to facilitate its development as a high-growth housing area at the perceived expense of the rural community. The different needs of the rural community, which is farming and horticulture, making a living from the land, and urban Aotearoa community, and the large travel distances required to attend meetings across the ward. On paper, the proposal may appear to result in operational efficiencies for council and provide fair representation across the ward. However, this will not provide effective or fair representation for either the Aotearoa or the rural community because of the underlying differences in their activities and needs. Aotearoa is a unique and spatially well-defined community within the Kaimai Ward. With its location on a peninsula, good climate and beaches, it started as a holiday location that developed into a permanent community primarily occupied by retirees and has further grown with an increasing number of younger families. Council has identified Aotearoa as a high-growth housing area to meet district housing demand, which has developed into a dormitory suburb of Tauranga, where services lag behind housing and population growth. The ultimate population of Aotearoa is about 14,000, with a current population of about 5,000. Massive growth is planned on this peninsula. During the summer, tourists and holiday makers increase the population, putting pressure on beach access, parking, boat ramp access, retail, and other services. The major concerns of Aotearoa residents include the provision of necessary infrastructure and services such as roads, parking, access to State Highway 2, development of parks and reserves, a secondary school, a public swimming pool, a town centre, sports facilities, water supply, sewerage, public transport, policing and security, and the development of an industrial area to provide local employment. The rural part of the Kaimai Ward is populated primarily by people who make their living from the land. Horticulture, namely kiwi fruit and avocados, dairy farming, sheep and beef farming, and contractors and rural supply outlets and pack houses servicing these rural activities. Their main interest is roads and to a limited extent, water supply. The demography and concerns and needs of the people living in Aotearoa are very different to those people living in the rural part of the Kaimai Ward. For this reason, Aotearoa should not be combined with any of the rural part of the Kaimai Ward to form a community board. Such an action would not be consistent with the requirements to provide effective representation as required by Section 19T of the Act. In addition, the proposed reduction in the number of Kaimai Ward councillors from 4 to 3 will result in a far less representation for residents and ratepayers across this ward. We accordingly object to option 5C to establish the existing Aotearoa Community Board and to establish a Kaimai Ward Community Board. We advocate for the status quo for the Aotearoa Community Board and that a new community board is formed that represents the remainder of the Kaimai Ward. That is the proposed Kaimai East subdivision and the Kaimai West subdivision that includes the rural land outside Aotearoa that was proposed to be included in the Aotearoa subdivision. And if I could just comment on some points raised by Mr. Jones and Councillor Bingham regarding a move to larger government and discretionary spend of community boards. The amount of a discretionary spend is not the important role of a community board. It is actually, according to the Act, listening to and advocating for their community. This will not happen when disparate communities of interest are grouped in one community board. It's a recipe for failure. When you look at the development requirements, the lifestyle, the work and activities within Aotearoa, they do not mesh with what is going on in the rural community. In fact, Aotearoa is almost completely isolated from the surrounding Kaimai rural community. It's not a service town for any of those industries. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I must say thank you to you, Bruce, for the succinctness of your summary that you presented to us. I really do appreciate that. And the other observation is that you will understand, as most others will, as the theme continues to evolve as we go through the afternoon, it gets to a point where we've got the message, and I think asking any more questions doesn't necessarily expand what we've already got in terms of an understanding. I'm at a point where I don't need to ask any questions. I've read your original submission, and I really appreciate the way you've summarised it today. But I'll check with fellow commissioners. Commissioner
I'm fine,
Bickham,
thank you.
yeah. Are you happy, Commissioner
I'm
Bob?
happy, thank you, yes.
So please don't be offended by there not being a question. It just does get to a point where we've got the message pretty clear, and I think the questions that we've already asked, if your submission was earlier, we probably would have had the same answers come through. So I'm comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Well
you,
done.
Bruce.
Next submission is where are we? Katikati Community Board, represented by John Clements, and that is on page 49. Welcome, John. Gosh, I hope you're not driving as well. I'll just let you get the mute button sorted, but don't stress, just take your time.
Thank you.
Brilliant. I don't know, have you been following proceedings?
Some of it, up in Auckland, so I've had to, I've been traveling.
Sure.
But I have seen some of it, and it's been very insightful, and your last comments are quite correct. So thank you for that regarding Bruce McCabe's.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. So look, feel free to summarise the submission that's gone in, and if we do have particular questions, obviously we'll fire them in, but we're in your hands.
Right. Thank you very much. All right. This is a submission from the Katikati Community Board, and thank you very much for your time and listening. The Katikati Community Board, or its predecessors, existed since 1893. So that's for nearly 150 years. The Katikati Road Board Committee was established by Vesey Stewart and has had an active representation as a board since that time in various forms as it emerged. And therefore, the Katikati Community Board objects to the Western Bay District Council regarding option 5.c, and let me go there. As stated in the written proposal, the option does not comply with the plus minus 10% rule of fair representation in 19V subsection 2 of the Act. The areas of representation should be roughly equal representation within 10%. This is not the case in proposal 5.c. The council claims 389 submitters supported the current 3 general wards for councillor elections. This did not spill over into community boards. The council can only provide one submission to support the council proposal regarding the proposed arrangements for the community board, a minuscule 0.3. The 5C option was not consulted upon. When the council did consult, there was a strong and vocal support for the current representation and boundaries. In fact, it was embarrassingly strong support. So the community boards have credibility and in this area, and in Makatu and in Te Puke. 5C emerged after their consultation at a workshop as a total surprise. After consultation, the lack of community input is deeply concerning when recognized processes and community input were overlooked. Effective community representation rests on decisions reflecting the needs and perspectives of the community. They reflect and give council a mandate, hence the saying, by the people, for the people. No information was provided as to how the areas were connected or if they reflected a community of interest, nor whether the areas wanted a community board. It is known that some areas were happy with their current arrangement and had turned down this option of community boards as its form. Mainly Te Puna had actually actively, the ratepayers had turned it down. Ambushing the process post-consultation with an option that was not even considered and without any detailed information as to how they may work has undermined trust in council, councillors, and impacts the efficient functioning of community boards right across the Western Bay. The option within council was tabled at the last minute without any community input and does not reflect any communities of interest. There's no information on funding or how community boards will work when they cut across communities of interest. And I refer this to Waihi Beach has got particular beach issues and flooding. We have a different set of problems and challenges. The 5C option required the mayor's casting vote, and it's a clear indication that there was a division within council. 50% of the councillors voted against this option. If we now turn to the community board, it doesn't support 5C. The community of interest is the current Katikati ward, which is a horticultural region, and that's already been stated by Alan, with Kedi town being a service and social centre for the ward. And in its 150-year history, it has always been a close community with over 80 community organisations. So it is a very close community. It's got 80, and some of them are still active and have carried on for 150 years. The Katikati community of interest is the current ward, which is a horticultural region, with the Keti town being a service and social centre for the ward. In its 150 years of history, it has always been a close community. Waihi Beach is a holiday resort with greater connection to Waihi. The population has big swings in summer when up to 20,000 holidaymakers stay at Waihi Beach, a very different community to Katikati. Some of the permanent residents may shop or send their children through Katikati, but the major pull is Waihi. Waihi Beach has significant challenges regarding flooding and beach erosion, amongst others, not significant issues in Katikati. Katikati faces other challenges. The proposed integration of Waihi Beach and Katikati wards will not be efficient or effective in decision-making. This is clearly articulated in the council submission. The current residents covered by the Katikati Community Board overwhelmingly wanted the area to stay as it's currently defined. The two wards have limited community of interest, and the council admits this in their own submission. Nowhere does the Western Bay of Plenty submission deal with how these communities would combine and make decisions. The arrangements are rushed, as reflected in 3-3 representation. Originally, it was 4-2. It's a rushed political decision, not a logical one. The proposed arrangements will lead to tension as they try to make decisions, funding, providing grants, and represent their communities. This is contrary to what has been said earlier. The community boards are working well. Council has tried a so-called community forum and a ward forum at Waihi Beach, and this has been before the commissioner and was rejected. And they have been underwhelming, with limited local issues being raised, or they've been local within communities of interest, not as a ward. The concept of ward forums was rejected by the local government commissioner when it was raised previously. If one turns to the 10% rule as per 19V2, then the ratio of community board members from Katikati and Waihi would be 6:2, not 3:3, based on the population in the two wards, and not 3:3. At a minimum, it should be 4:2 in favour of Katikati ward, to meet the 10% rule, and even that doesn't meet the 10% rule. The other challenge, of course, as has been raised, it will impact on councillor representation due to the heavy bias of population in Katikati. The Katikati Community Board asked that the local governor commissioner reject the Western Bay option and stay with the status quo. 5C does not provide fair representation for Katikati, having regard to the population in terms of the Local Government Act. This claim is even supported by council. And therefore, please don't combine the two and make the challenge very difficult in decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And you've summarised that as efficiently as you can, based on the basis of your overall report. I think I'm going to file one question on your last, on your last page of your submission that we've read. You talked about the community forums, and you've said they're poorly supported by the community. What I was interested to understand was, given there's a community board in place, who called the forums? Was it you, the community board, or was it council?
Council, and they were chaired by councillors, and the community board was left out. We were invitees.
So that's my next point. Were you invited?
We were invited.
Okay, brilliant. Got it. Okay, so council.
But it's our community. We're the elected representatives in that community.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm just
Yep,
making sure I understand how it's worked. So, so just to reconfirm, there were forums organised and run by council at their invitation, and the community board was invited to attend.
That's right.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just check with fellow commissioners. Councillor, my gosh, Commissioner Bigham.
Commissioner.
Kia ora. Thank
Kia
you,
ora.
John. Thank you. Appreciate you taking time out in your mobile office there to join us today.
It is mobile, literally 4 wheels.
John, I'm just interested in also on the final page of your submission where you submit that the Omokoroa Community Board should be retained and it could extend its boundary to if Te Puna residents agree. But aside from that, you say council could give it more authority and support to ensure it is able to function properly. Why do you think it is not functioning properly at the moment, and what more support and authority do you think the community board needs? What's not working and what do you need?
Well, I think it's decisions that get made around roading, around parks and reserves, around social facilities. For example, when I came onto this role, I had to go around and do an audit on the toilets within the area, which I never thought I would ever be a toiletologist. But, it was those basic things that in fact should be delegated and more actively pursued, because those are the local issues. Those are things that playgrounds, toilets, community resource facilities, and even grants and funding for that. We do have a small $8,000 grant scheme for local communities. And we're trying to get that, devolve that as low as possible to some of the smaller organizations. but it's those things that are of local issues that we can deal with.
So how do you propose that council would be able to deal with those with all the different community boards when council's bigger objective is to look at the whole district and figure out, wouldn't individual community boards all put their hand up and say ours is most important and we need 5 toilets that work, etc.? How do you compensate for the need for the council to look district wide when there are local issues that it sounds like each community board wants prioritised?
If you look at the budgeting process within the Western Bay, there are 3 regions, which is the 3 that are coming up now. When those, and then they get fragmented into Katikati and Waihi Beach, for example, and Amakara. When that budget is being debated in the long-term plan and in the annual plan, that should come down to a discussion between councillors and the community board as to what the urgent requirements are within that community, so that there is a direct input into the budgeting process and a review of what's in there and what could be sacrificed for other priorities that may exist within the community.
Right, and that's what's not happening. Is that what you're saying is
That's
one
right.
of the
Yep.
issues now? Okay,
Yep.
Thank you for that clarity.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. Just checking on Commissioner Ball.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. You commented that this new system would lead to tension.
Mhm.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you have a certain limited budget. For example, the roading budget within the community boards. Waihi Beach has a budget for roading, and we have a budget for roading of about 120,000. That budget, when you know that Waihi Beach, for example, and I use this as an example to give clarity, has certain roading issues due to flooding and other erosion. We have certain requirements in terms of roading as well. How do you prioritize that across the district? Who decides what the priorities are? Because you'll then have two communities wanting limited resource.
Mm.
So that would be a practical example of the tension. The same would go for community events. The same would go for trying to coordinate and synchronize community events. Could easily lead to tension as well if you want to grow that region. I'm involved in economic development within Katikati, and do I stretch the boundaries to Waihi Beach? Well, luckily I have a working relationship with Waihi Beach, and therefore we can hold those discussions. But it's still a matter of there's a limited dollar value of resource that's available.
Okay. We heard from another submitter, and his name just escapes me at the moment, that we should be working more together, whatever our differences. We should be united instead of divided. What's your comment to that?
Absolutely. But in the Local Government Act, it starts to talk of communities of interest in this devolution. So therefore, we do work together. I mean, I attend most Waihi Beach community board meetings, and they attend mine. So we do collaborate and discuss things. But when it comes to decision-making around local interests and communities of interest, they are distinct and allow us to focus on those issues. So we do collaborate, and talk to one another, but it's not about decision-making around what the priorities are.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time.
No, thank you. On my mobile.
Yes, on your mobile. Yes. Literally.
Literally.
Brilliant, John. Thanks for the
Literally.
effort and the time that you put into it. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much. Bye.
Cheers. Brilliant. We'll go now to, this is the irony of it, isn't it? Katikati Waihi Beach Residents and Ratepayers Association. And we've got Keith on board.
Just, Commissioner, we're just promoting him through now.
Brilliant, thank you. Hello, Keith. You're back again for round two. I'll get you to just go off mute for a minute.
I had arranged for another gentleman to do this part of it, but I mightn't have given him the right number to.
Ah, okay.
So rather than waste your time, I'll go ahead.
Okay, so just before you kick off, this is a substantial submission. We're looking for the summarised version of it.
Okay, I'll try and keep it as short as possible.
Thank you.
I'm the chairman of the Cadicat Waihi Beach Residents and Ratepayers Association, and I've been asked about this when I don't support the ward community for Cadicat Waihi Beach. It's because we cover the whole of the ward. We're opposed to the reduction in the number of general ward councillors and to the proposal to have 3 ward community boards. At the last representation review, the Commission decided to endorse Council's proposal to retain the existing 3 wards and a total of 11 councillors, stating, "We believe this will achieve effective representation for the communities of interest making up Western Bay of Plenty District." But the Commission was, quote, "unconvinced and all of Kaimai Ward Committee would provide effective representation for the Aotearoa community and determined that the Aotearoa Community Board would be retained with its current membership alongside the other 4 existing community boards." We agreed with those decisions then and contend that very little has changed since then. We request that the Commission maintain the status quo: 3 wards, 5 community boards, and 11 councillors. We appeal the decision to reduce the number of general ward councillors to 8. Council is proposing to, well, I covered most of this earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
We object to the decision to replace 5 community boards with 3 ward community boards. This is option 5C, on the grounds that there was no consultation with the public. Council introduced this last-minute proposal to disestablish its current 5 community boards and establish 3 new ward community boards, 1 for each ward. Each ward would have subdivisions: 2 in Cadicat Waihi Beach, 3 in Kaimai, and 3 in Makatu Te Puke. Council claims that submitters told them that local community representation is important and that reducing community board areas was not favoured. That is why they decided to extend and strengthen community board coverage. The claim that local community representation was important relates to the desire to retain community boards in their current form, and the conclusion that reducing community board areas was not favoured was the result of Council's proposal to reduce the area of both the Cadicat and Te Puke community boards. The proposal to reduce the area of the Cadicat Community Board by about half is so counterintuitive, it is tempting to think it was designed specifically to elicit this response. Cadicat and Waihi Beach are each communities of interest, but they're very different communities. The people of Waihi Beach resent being what they see as a milch cow for the rest of the Western Bay of Plenty district. There are good reasons why they have tried twice to get out of Western Bay of Plenty district. We suggest 2 alternatives to option 5C. I spoke of these earlier. That's to add community boards to the other wards. We disagree with what council claims are the advantages of this proposal. We're concerned at the lack of objectivity in these claims and council's failure to consult on what is a very radical proposal. This lack of objectivity is illustrated by the first so-called advantage. Quote, responds to feedback relating to inequitable coverage of community boards in the district, as every property in the district would be included in one of the community boards, and in brackets, excluding Matakana and Rangiora Islands. Estimated electoral population 250, unquote. There will not be equitable coverage if the islands are excluded. Furthermore, people on the islands who are not on the Maori roll will not get to vote for councillors. The issues and options paper lists 17 other comments made about the location and coverage of community boards. Only 3 asked for better coverage. At the 2019 Commission hearing, then Mayor Gary Weber stated that council had undertaken a review of the communities of interest making up the district by seeking residents' views. Council had identified 11 communities of interest. I understand that's 12 now. It considered these were reflected in the current 3-ward structure with one minor alteration in the boundary between 2 wards. So if there are 11 communities of interest in the district, why are they being forced into just 3 community boards? There are serious flaws in the rationale for the Katikat Waihi Beach Ward Community Board proposed subdivision arrangements. They do not comply with the plus or minus 10% rule for fair representation. However, council claims, quote, this is considered appropriate given the nature of the ward and the communities within it. The 2 subdivisions represent 2 distinct areas within the ward, Waihi Beach and Katikat. These areas are connected for schooling, shopping, recreational, employment, and social activities at a ward level, unquote. This is not true. While Waihi Beach Secondary School pupils can choose between Katikat and Waihi colleges, there is minimal connection in regard to shopping, recreation, employment, sport, or social activities. The Waihi Beach community has made at least 2 concerted attempts to break away from Katikat and the wider Western Bay community since 1989. Partly because the residents feel they are being treated unfairly by Western Bay Plenty District Council, and partly because they feel more closely associated with Waihi. The issues and options proposal states, quote, community committees are outside the scope of a representation review. So whilst the final proposal could signal this approach, there would be opportunity to do further work and engagement on how Western Bay's approach would operate in more detail in advance of the 25-28 triennium commencing. Council appears to be intimating that they can modify what the commissioners have decided before the 2025 elections. That gets back to your question earlier, Mr. Chair, about, I think it was option 5D, where they were ward committees. And one wonders why that was even mentioned in the final proposal. Thank you.
Got it. Okay, thanks, Keith. Thanks for that summary. Just in terms of write a reply, Mayor James, it might be useful to just get a response there, because there's a he said, she said sort of a thing going on where so I think it'll be page 6 of Keith's submission, and the clause starts, there are serious flaws in the rationale for the Kati Waihi board, and in the next paragraph, the statement is, this is not true. it'd be just, I think we should get a comment because it's quite important. So that,
Happy to do that.
thank you. Where am I? Commissioner Bigham.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Keith, for taking the time again and hanging in there with us. I'm going to ask a question which might seem a little obvious, but also a little obnoxious. So you're from the Katikati Waihi Beach Residents and Ratepayers Association, correct?
Correct, yes.
So you know what's coming. My question is, how come a Residents and Ratepayers Association can work together, but a community board would be incapable of doing so?
I think, well, first of all, we're only in this group together because we look after ward matters. Okay.
So how would that not work in a community board perspective?
I think things are a bit more serious when you have a ward community board rather than a ratepayers association, which is a lot more informal than we're not fighting to get budget money for our own little town. We're just trying to look after all the ratepayers in the ward.
Okay, interesting perspective.
That's what it's going to come down to if you have a ward community board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ball.
Okay. I'm fine, thank you. Yes.
You're okay. Okay. Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Keith.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks for the effort.
Keith. Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
No worries. We'll move straight into the Waihi Beach Community Board observations. Danny Simpson, and for those of you who are still waiting, I do apologise. We're desperately trying to catch up, but we're not too far off. But got a team.
Thank you all for having us. Myself, Danny Simpson, I'm the chair of the Waihi Beach Community Board, and I've got with me my fellow board member, Wayne Stevenson, as well.
Wayne, perfect. You've been watching the process, so yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Some of the points that I originally was going to speak to have been covered off, so I'm just going to skim over what you've already heard.
Brilliant. Thank you.
But essentially what we want to talk about today is the heartbeat of local democracy, and the fact that our take on it is that local boards are not admin units. We are the pulse of our place, and for us that's Waihi Beach, that's east to Athenry, it's south to Bowentown, it's north to Orokawa Bay. And we believe that when you diminish our voice, you're not just redrawing boundaries on a map, it's severing decades of trust with the council, with our identity, and the wisdom that comes from knowing a community like the back of your hand. And we're really clear on this, that it's a decision that isn't about efficiency, but it is eroding a democracy. And we believe that the proposal treats Waihi Beach and Katikati as essentially interchangeable cells in what is a bureaucratic ledger, but that misses out the fact that Waihi Beach is battling some really difficult issues around ageing, infrastructure. It's not fit for purpose anymore, those stormwater systems that have threatened homes and lives. We've been battling to get a new library to serve our community. We're about to embark on a review of our community plan. And obviously the situation where we basically become what is almost a city overnight in those peak times, which, yes, that tourism spend is incredibly important to our little economy, but with that brings some, pretty huge pressures on our infrastructure. Whereas, down the road, Katikati, yes, it's navigating rapid growth. They're balancing, orchard economies and their infrastructure strain. So for us, they're not admin efficiencies. That is the reality of what our communities are dealing with on an everyday basis. But by combining these boards, it's going to force board members to make essentially mastering two really distinct worlds, right? And so while, yes, okay, we might access services in Katikati or vice versa, we're not experts in their areas. We don't live there. And in fact, Waihi, as has been pointed out, we actually have a closer affiliation with them. It's about 75% of the students, intermediate and high school age, actually go to Waihi College, not to Katikati. There's also a lot of employment in the mine in Waihi. So just in terms of, I won't go into it too much because I appreciate at the beginning you made the point about not talking to the process, but I feel like there's kind of been an illusion of consultation. 74% of submitters wanted to retain our boards. And then this option materialised really late in the piece, no time for scrutiny, no time to consult with the communities that would affect them. It's not just a poor process, it's our opinion that it's actually a betrayal of our communities. And in fact, today is the first opportunity that myself and others have actually had to engage formally with the final representation proposal. I think it's really absurd that our community hasn't had its say. And what's really clear is that the anecdotal conversations that us as a board have had in the community and what we've followed really closely on local social media pages is that the vast majority absolutely do not support this move at all. And I think when you're talking about localism and action, you know, how are we expected to make decisions on behalf of another community, which is what, you know, John was pointing out before. For example, you know, last year we allocated $55,000 from our roading account to design a much needed pedestrian refuge that's used by school kids, will be, and a lot of the elderly residents in the north area of Waihi Beach. John Clements probably doesn't know anything about that, and I wouldn't expect him to know that or have to make a decision on it. Likewise, should Waihi Beach residents, board members, be the ones making decisions about their Market Square upgrade? I really don't think that is should be the case at all. So again, coming back to those competing priorities, that's a really big ask to put on board members. I think the other thing too is that there's a risk in setting a precedent here when Section 19V of the Act demands communities of interest guide these decisions. And yet, you know, here we are looking to merge a coastal haven with an inland horticulture hub. It's nuts. Comments too have been made that the current boards are not working well. I would just observe that council hasn't really provided clarity on the what is not working well to that. So it would be helpful to have some clarity around that if those sorts of subjective comments are being made. And having equal representation for all really has not been discussed with the communities. Some rural communities submitted against having a board, but were ignored. Indeed, the Paengaroa Community Association actually told council at the same meeting where they made this decision on November 20, it didn't want a community board. It didn't see the need for one. And I guess that point too being made that Matakana and Rangiwaia don't need a board to be fairly represented at council kind of shows a real inconsistency there with council's argument for this. So I think, you know, the just decision would have been to leave the status quo, particularly where we haven't been consulted and councillors were really divided on that. So it's not that we resist change. We appreciate that, you know, things change, communities evolve over time. But what we are really upset about is that it's carelessness in the process. And we believe that we have an opportunity to be actually a beacon of local democracy and not a cautionary tale of how to go about these things badly. So frankly, just think that our community really does deserve better, and that localism hopefully is who is the winner on the day here. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Well done, Danny. I should have mentioned this earlier on, but we'll be getting the notes from all of the submitters. I'm just trying to look at my screen. Bear with me. We're getting a notes from all of the submitters, and I wasn't rapid enough, but you have, I have to say, come up with some quite gems of phrases that I've not heard before. So I just want to acknowledge that.
I work in comms, Chair,
Oh, God,
and
yeah,
I'm an
yeah.
ex-journalist, so.
Oh, well, there you go. There's a number
There
of
you go.
phrases I've not heard before, but I thought they had some resonation around them. But we need to just check in for questions. I mean, I'm
Yes.
comfortable with what you've observed. I've got the message. Commissioner Bigham and
Kia ora.
Commissioner Bull. Commissioner
Thank you.
Bigham?
Kia ora, thank you. Danny, recovering journalist myself, so
Yeah.
I get it. I'm interested in, you see you're not resistant to change.
Mm.
There is potential for this council to not have another representation review for 6 years.
Mm.
What might that mean for your community? Are there things that might need to be addressed before that? Or do you feel the status quo would be appropriate for the next 6 years, considering it's been there since 1989?
Yeah. And look, Wayne and I was talking before, I don't think it's so much the looking back at historical aspects. I think it is where we are today and where we're going. And I think the way that we're structured at the moment is fit for purpose. We've got some really meaty projects underway. We've got a massive stormwater issue that the community board, along with members of council staff and the public, are actually working really well on, really collaboratively and proactively. There's a whole bunch of different projects, that are actually coming together really well. So I have no concerns with the way that the current board makeup is actually progressing here. Will it be different in 6 years' time? I don't believe it will, in terms of how our communities, as I've explained, the demographics are so vastly different. But hey, I would never say never. I'm just saying at the moment, the way it works for Katikati and for ourselves, don't mess with what's not broken.
Okay. May I just ask another question,
Sure.
Mr. Chair? So you mentioned that some communities have said they didn't want a community board, but council have told us that others do want a community board or have asked in the past, or even as a part of this process, are looking for that representation. And some of the submitters have told us that community boards are broken, but you're saying it actually works really well where you are. So where do we sit with that?
Yeah.
How do we interpret all these mixed messages?
Yeah. So for transparency, we have had some issues in terms of machinations in our board, and we have a different structure now. We've got to a point where we have a really good relationship with staff who come to our workshops. We're getting a bunch of stuff ticked off our lists. And so, I can't speak for others, but I can speak for our own. And so it's been puzzling to myself and to a couple of other of our board members in terms of what's not working, because I feel like for us, we actually are now in a place where, where things are actually traveling along really quite nicely. We have, good communication with our community, and we're not hearing from them that they're unhappy with the progress that we're making on various projects.
Fine. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dani. Commissioner Bull?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dani. It's claimed that 40% of the area does not have a community board, and that's one reason they think they want to go to this new system. But from what you were saying, you feel perhaps that they don't want community boards because they don't want community boards, rather than the fact that there are no community boards in their area?
Yeah, Commissioner Bull, it's interesting to us that that's been the stance. I mean, our kind of boundary lines for Waihi Beach, Community Beach boundary, is actually quite a tight little close-knit community, and it is quite different to Katikati. So, that 40% is potentially sort of the rural component of Katikati, whereas their board at the moment, I believe the boundary is quite, it's the town centre and surrounds. So if you're going to expand that, maybe it makes sense to expand the boundary line for the Katikati Community Board. But again, quite different demographics that you're talking about.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for that. Yep.
Brilliant. Thanks for the observations, and Wayne, thanks for being there in support as well. Appreciate the time that you've made available, and we're just about at the end of hearing from all the submitters, and then obviously we'll write a reply later on, and then we'll go away and deliberate. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. So just a little bit of swap around now. We're now going to go directly to Ross Gowdy and Trish, I think they're coming in together. Fantastic. So page 152, 153. Hi guys,
Good afternoon.
nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I've been following the accounts that's going on.
Brilliant. So
I'm also on the Waihi Beach Community Board, but I was also a councillor for 12 years, so I'm well aware of the processes.
brilliant. Thank you. So we're looking forward to your succinct, summarised observations.
Yes, I gather that. It's interesting. I also sent you a video this morning of Waihi Beach, what it is, because it's certainly different to Kitikat.
Brilliant. Okay.
Now, this is my own personal submission, and I'll make it quite plain. To you all. This 5C option concerning community boards was never discussed with the community at all.
Yep.
I have to emphasise that it was never discussed. It was they went through all their things. Then at the last minute, they said, "Oh well, we'll do this." Didn't have any input from the community. So I'll just make that one point. Yep. And I will concentrate on particularly 19V and the fact of about the 10%. Now you already know that the breakout of Waihi Beach and Kitikat, and I may mention they are totally covered now by their wards. There is no one outside that area in those two wards that are not in the community boards, one or the other. There's 4,100 for Waihi Beach and 11,870 for Kitikat. That is the populations, and there is a wide disparity between the requirement under the Act to have equal numbers within a division. They're 48%. They're about as bad as possible. So I need to focus on that. And also, as many have discussed, 19V33 would limit the effective representation of communities of interest by uniting two different communities of interest with few commodities of interest. Even if you were going to study 5C option and telling the community that the council does not need to consult and that 19V2 and 19V33 do not matter. Waihi Beach and Kitikat have been separate community areas since 1989. Combining the two areas is a bad idea. While it may be an option within the already established ward, i.e. Kaimai, but I'm not talking about Kaimai. That's their take on their own thing. So I have spent 34 years in Waihi Beach when I came over to farm there. I presently live in Kitikat, but that's only in the last couple of years. I know how difficult it is to actually make an impression upon Kitikat affairs. I go to their meetings, take an interest in what's going on, but I dare not. I'm seen as a Waihi Beach person. I am not seen as living in Kitikat and have rights above or below. I've been told in no uncertain terms, don't interfere. You're from Waihi Beach. There's a lot of things have already been sent about where Kattekat's a rural area, Waihi Beach is a tourist town, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to summarise a few of these. Council claims 389 submitters support the current 3 general ward approaches. They do for wards, for councillors, but they didn't ask the question about community boards, and they're fluffing up over the thing. So, council can only find one submission out of the original submissions to the representation thing that suggested, oh, well, perhaps we just combine Waihi Beach and Kattekat. So they didn't go out to the community and ask them. And they've not provided any substantial information about the connections of Waihi Beach and Kattekat, other than we know we sometimes shop there, we sometimes go to pay bills or what have you, and some of our kids, about 25% of our high school kids go to Kattekat and 75% go to Waihi.
Yep.
So in conclusion, and this is very summarised, I ask the Commission to reject this option and stay with the status quo. Now,
Thank you, Ross.
it's unfortunate that this opportunity that comes around every 6 years has been, in my view, bungled.
Okay.
As of you didn't able to put together and put out to the community some forthright changes that had been consulted with the people, not we're coming at the last minute. So Waihi Beach, option 5C does not result in Waihi Beach and Kattekat receiving fair representation as per members, having regard to the population of every district or region or local area. The council admits that Waihi Beach and Kattekat are different communities. They actually admit it.
Yep.
I don't know whether, as commissioners, you can say, oh, well, we'll apply 5C to one part of the community, one part of the district, and not in the other part, or whether it's all take ever. Everyone gets the same.
Well, that's something we'll deliberate on in due course. But for the moment, I'm really concerned that Trish might have something to say.
Yes, she has.
I thought so.
Right.
Now, Trish, can you just lean just a bit closer to the camera because
Yes,
we
fine.
kind of like, yeah, there you go.
Good enough. I'll move on camera.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to speak. This is a grassroots perspective. That's from a resident and a ratepayer. I support the status quo, a Waihi Beach Community Board and a Katikati Community Board, and I'm going to tell you why. I've been in the Waihi Beach Community Board area since its inception in 1989, and there are a lot of people who are just like me. The residents and ratepayers value having their own community board, as it's the first access for the local people to participate in topics regarding the running of their area, as well as the larger Western Bay District Council area. Waihi Beach Community has its own utility services, a sewage treatment plant, a water supply, the Athenry bores, a recycling centre, a community hall, a library, and its own little commercial shopping centre. Over the years, Waihi Beach has always had a strong community board voice by way of its elected board members and councillors. Many mayors since 1989, I'm sure you probably know some of them, have been Graham Weld, Joan Kahili, Maureen Anderson and Ross Patterson have valued and cared about the Waihi Beach Community Board area. I'm very disappointed, as are the majority of residents and ratepayers, that the present mayor and some councillors chose to not consult, or more importantly, not listen to their ratepayers here. The Waihi Beach Community Board has been very efficient. Having a local venue for anyone to speak is highly valued. It's renowned for having well-attended public forums where they listen and respond to what people say. Ratepayers say they like being able to access the board in their area can feel confident speaking publicly and being listened to without criticism or disparagement in a non-threatening environment. This is what a board should be. As many people have pointed out, having to travel to Katikati, possibly especially to the council chambers at Barks Corner, Tauranga, is daunting. Many of us are outraged that the present mayor and some councillors think that lumping Waihi Beach in with Katikati is efficient and sensible. It's not. Local Government New Zealand has for years been critical of poor turnout and voter interest in local body elections. Waihi Beach Community Board area has always had a good turnout at election time, which is well above average and delivers to ratepayers to participate. Local people respond to having local people elected because they know they're au fait with their issues in their area. Therefore, Waihi Beach Community Board should not be combined with Katikati. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well done, Trish. Got the message loud and clear.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'll just check. I can't think. I've got no questions. I'll just check with fellow commissioners. I don't think we're all good. Yeah, I mean, clearly, we're at the end of a whole lot of people giving various perspectives on the same sort of challenges. So don't be offended that there's no questions.
No, I'm not. I'm just a grassroots, ordinary voting person.
just like the rest of the New Zealanders.
Yes.
Well done. Hey, thanks very much to you both. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, and thank you. And look at the
So we're now going to the final appellants this afternoon, and I'm just not quite sure. Is it so Brett Waterhouse, and I'm not sure if Alicia's going to be there or not.
Commissioner, I'm just bringing through Alicia now.
Oh, there's Alicia. Yep. Hey, Alicia.
Just asking you to unmute there, Alicia. Thank you.
Welcome, Alicia. Is it just yourself? Is it?
I'll go first and then I think Brett's after me.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, fantastic. So you've been watching the procedures so far. You got a bit of an idea?
I've seen bits and pieces, yes.
Okay, so just feel free to summarize the the key points and go from there.
Okay. So kia ora, commissioners. My name's Alicia Waterhouse. I'm here today because I strongly object the disestablishment of the community boards as proposed by the Western Bay District Council's Representation Review 5C. As a resident of Makatū for the past 14 years, a mother of 3 and a ratepayer for the last 7 years. So I've got a bit of an interest now in how our community is represented and engaging in matters like this is obviously new to me. I want to know a lot more now about how the decisions that everybody at the top makes is affecting us, basically. The representation review at the moment is just going to take away our voice as Makatūians. I want everyone's voice to be heard around the place because we're quite a unique little village, if you haven't already probably gathered that. Sorry, I'm just trying to find where I was at. So Makatū, we're not just a place on the map. We're a historic village with amazing Māori heritage and strong whānau-based values. We've got generational land ownership throughout Makatū. Proposal 5C threatens to undermine this unique cultural and historical significance. Localism is at the heart of our village. a place where you know your neighbours and where you know your neighbours' neighbours. We need strong voices in times of change, not a weakened one. Currently, Makatu's got 58 local businesses, 2 schools, a well-established fire brigade, a surf club, and a nationally recognised Coast Guard team. However, this proposal will be slashed from our 4 members to just 1 on a 6-member Makatu Te Puke board. This is not just unfair, it's unacceptable representation for Makatu. Merging distinct communities like Te Puke, Pukahina, Paengaroa and Makatu into one board will significantly hinder our ability to advocate for ourselves. The Council's decision to disestablish community boards will dilute our voice, making it more challenging to address local issues effectively. The decision-making process surrounding the proposal has been deeply flawed. The census data being utilised is unreliable, and as many residents refuse to engage with local government systems because they in turn keep letting them down time after time. So why do so little people engage with council processes? Because the council has earned a reputation now for being difficult, unresponsive, slow, and they don't listen to our needs. This proposal basically exemplifies that. It's critical to recognise that many in our community, especially the elderly, do not use the internet or any means of communication to stay informed. When I spoke with locals about the final proposal, their reaction was one of disbelief. They thought only minor boundary changes were being discussed, not a complete overhaul of the system. The maps provided were unclear and misleading, making it difficult to grasp what was being proposed. I also strongly object to the proposed boundary changes, which were presented as minor. In reality, they're geographically significant. This proposal will place Makatu in a position of being the little brother in decision-making with just 1 representative on a board of 6. Our ability to advocate for ourselves will be significantly weakened. Meanwhile, Eastern will have 2 representatives and Te Puke will have 3. The imbalance is evident. Makatu will struggle to have its voice heard. Public consultation, sorry, got to talk about this a little bit here. It should mean engaging with the public, letting them know about what's going on. The decisions were made last minute, and they were even the councillors were making amendments right up until the decision was made. Makatu and other small towns deserve strong representation, not to be sidelined under an unfair bias system. I ask you, Commissioners, to ensure that local voices remain strong and that community boards continue to provide grassroots representation where it is needed most. Expanding on why the boundaries is a bad idea, I feel like on the surface, extending the boundaries of ward might seem like a move towards efficiency or inclusion, but in reality, it risks undermining the very foundation of local democracy. This issue isn't just about lines on a map, it's about ensuring that every community has a voice and that no community loses their ability to speak as they wish, or if they remain as the community is now. Expanding the ward means stretching representation over a much larger area, diluting the influence of smaller communities like ours. Our local representatives currently understand Makatu's needs, but because they live and work here, being chucked in a larger ward, we risk losing that vital connection. The unique challenges we face, coastal erosion, local employment opportunities and community facilities are not the same as those in larger towns. Decision makers who are further removed from our realities will focus on areas with higher populations, leaving Makatu, Pukekohe and Paengaroa struggling to be heard. I understand they have ratepayer associations, but you know, that again wouldn't work for us. Our numbers are too small.
Okay.
One of the most powerful aspects of local representation is accountability. Right now, we know who to approach and we need action. If boundaries expand, we are absorbed into a larger ward. It becomes harder to hold our representatives accountable. They will have more areas to manage and competing interests, ultimately leading to less time and focus for Makatu. The further decision making gets from the people, the easier it is for concerns to be ignored. We need representatives who walk our streets, understand our coastline, and recognise the history and our unique way of life in Makatu, not politicians who just visit when it's time to campaign. I mean, I just feel like we all got blindsided. You'd seen on the maps that there's a clear indication that it was only going to be a small increase. And I think the majority, after going around, I mean, I sat down at the local fish shop for, I don't know, half an hour and seen just about someone from every family. And they had no idea that it was turning into this. And everybody's spewing about it. But again, it's the attitude of, oh, well, what are we going to do about it? The people at the top are just going to do whatever they want to do anyway. So they'll just go and do that. And, you know, I encourage them to write in. A lot of them did write in and submit, which I brought to the council office myself, which they made very difficult to actually process.
Well, the good news is that you're here and you have articulated very strongly. We've also got it in writing on the screen here. So
yeah.
We won't go into how it happened at the candidate. Yeah.
I just thought I'd touch on that a little bit. I just thought that, you know, for anybody, I brought them over to the council office and for anyone from our village to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I know they didn't sign it with their name because, again,
I get it.
You guys will do what you want to do, really.
Okay. Do you want to pass over to Brett and let him finish this out?
Yep, he can finish it off.
What she said. No.
I thought you did. No, seriously, you've both put a lot of effort into the observations that you're making now, but it might be useful just to finish it out from your perspective as well, Brett.
Yep, no, 100%. And thank you, commissioners, for hearing me today. My name's obviously Brett Woodhouse. Can I rip into it there? Yep. Okay. And I'm a proud born and bred Makatuian. I got deep whānau leading back into Makatu. No, my dad, he was one of the founders of the Makatu Fire Brigade. My papa, he was a caretaker for many years in Makatu. So it does have deep, meaningful heart to everyone that does actually live in Makatu. It is part of them. It's not a town. It's not a place you stay. It's your home. Okay, so that's how we treat Makatu out our way. So to be linking us into another city, I call Te Puke more of a city than a village in my perspective. We personally have one shop, a couple of fish and chip shops, whereas they've got movies and booze shops in there. So to call us similar is mind-boggling in my eyes. We've obviously got coastal erosion, we've got estuary, we've got rivers, whereas these are different needs to Paengaroa. So to call us in similar commonalities, I think that's a myth. I'll abbreviate all my stuff because clearly everyone's said everything that I kind of wanted to say. So I'll cut to the chase of a few key points that I think need to be resurrected. if this was actually better for the district and better for the communities, why is there so much pushback from all the community boards and every community member that I speak to in the public about this proposal? If that was the aim for the councillors to push this proposal 5C through, that it was going to be beneficial and make things easier, smoother running, then why is there so much pushback from veteran community board members? I'm a newbie. I've just got sworn in on the 20th. So I've come with the attitude of the older generation have done their part. It's time for some youngins to come crawling through the ladders. And I'm trying to slowly learn my way on what can and can't be done and how you're supposed to say things. So I think the biggest part about the community boards is that, you know, the information comes from the locals, and the only way to get the information is to have, you know, 4 members out on the ground. They get 4 different circles, they get 4 different feedback directions. That is the perspective that we feed to the councillors to try and make them make better decisions. Because at the end of the day, we're just trying to support the decision makers in making the right call for our locals. Because to lose any more power in our voice, then we're not going to get heard. You know, we as a community board have been striving. Well, I've only just jumped on there, but I know the Makatū Community Board has been striving for particular road improvements and some basic infrastructures of curbing to control a bit of our stormwater for many years. It's not the matter of the community boards not speaking and voicing our local needs. It's the hearing problem from the councillors that aren't foreseeing what we've been screaming out for many years. So personally, I don't think it's a community board problem. It's looking further up the ranks, the staff and then the council and how they run their delegation of funds to roading and things like that. You know, Makatū is obviously quite a small community boundary, and that's why our rates, we actually self-implemented an extra fee on top of our rates to try and get some money back into the town to try and foresee some of these basic infrastructure needs. You know, there's been nothing in the 10-year plan for Makatū, and why is that? Okay. Because we are the little brother, and we need to step up and become part of the family, even ranks.
Got it. Well done. Well articulated, and I think we've got the message pretty clearly there, Brett. But I am going to just check with fellow commissioners for questions. I've either Brett or what? I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me. Questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. And Benita, can I? You're okay.
I'm good. Thank you both for your passion.
Yes.
No worries.
Okay. Thanks, Alicia. Thanks for the energy there, and Brett, thank you very much for your observations as well. And good luck in your new career on a community board.
Cheers, mate. Thank you for listening.
No worries. Rightio. So if you look at the clock, we're 4 minutes over from where we started this morning. So I don't think that's too bad, but my goodness, I think we need a break for a moment. So look, just checking in. With right a reply, Mayor James. We need a break anyway, and there may be. I'd imagine by now the team have done a pretty good job in the background with preparation for right of reply. Are you comfortable that we take a break and come back at 4:30 as a court? Do you need any more time?
I've already written mine myself, but I would like a little bit of input on some of the technical aspects from my staff and from John. So 20 minutes will be fine.
A good 20 minutes. Okay, so look, we originally set down to reconvene at 4:30. Why don't we make that 4:40 out of respect of, you know, we need to do this properly and give appropriate time. So we're only going to kick off 10 minutes later. I'll just check in with Commissioner Bigham.
Yeah, Brendan, can I just add a query, if I may, for the right of reply?
Sure. Yeah.
The last submitters talked about they were opposed to moving the boundaries for. I should have asked whether they were opposed to moving the boundaries for the wards, But can I ask anyway, the proposed ward boundary changes, those slight movements, how many people do those affect? They look like very rural areas. I'm just interested to know how many people those proposed changes affect. If I may.
We'll get you the proper number shortly.
Yeah.
Thank you very
also,
much.
I'd also say it doesn't affect Makatu.
Yeah, I can see that on the maps. Just interested to know how many people it does affect.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Well done,
Okay.
thank you.
I feel that we've got enough questions in for the writer replies section, and we can have a bit of a chat as we go through that anyway, should there be something else. But let's agree that we'll reconvene. So we'll adjourn and reconvene at 4:40. That should give everybody plenty of time. Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Mayor James, and
Thank
we'll
you.
do the usual, turn the screens and audio off.
That's why I haven't bought it.
Gwen, your mic's on. Can you turn that off, Ali?
Yes, I will do that right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Look at that for timing. Perfect. Have we got everybody? Yep, we're all here. Perfect. Okay, so we reconvene and we're passing straight back to you, Mayor James, for right of reply. We just might have to ask something, don't know. We'll just see how we go. But we're now back in your hands.
Thank you, Commissioner Duffy. I thought I might answer the specific questions you posed first of all, and then go into my right of reply flow, if that's okay with you.
Yep.
Okay. So the first question that was asked was around community board delegations and examples of what those might be. Noting that this isn't a final decision, but this is things that we see could be possible. So potential to devolve to each community board the community matching fund to progress identified community projects or actions from community plans. That currently sits with council and is around $140,000. Potential for reserve management plan processes to be led by community boards and the related funding that goes with that. Administering and distributing facilities in the community fund with a ward allocation model. That's a new fund that we're setting up in, I think, 1 or 2 years' time, which will be quite significant. Devolution of funding to support local events with staff support. Locally led community engagement efforts, again, with supporting the staff and funding to inform policy and planning approaches. Possible administration of local service delivery contracts. Being the holders of place-based spatial plans, which is a new way of doing things to update our district plan effectively. We've started in Te Puke, and that's going to move to Puna next, and the Kaimai ward. Partner with Tangata Whenua on naming decisions, say for roads or bridges or in their rohi. Reserves as well. Yep. Managing specified community facilities, including approval of leases and licenses to a set maximum. And then also another benefits, an opportunity for much stronger advocacy and or shared understanding of the opportunities, challenges and aspirations of adjacent communities, not otherwise within a community board area. Next question I had was, how do resident and ratepayer associations work? I'll answer that with variably. Some have a positive relationship with and work well with council, others less so. They are a voice, but they do not necessarily provide a democratic or diverse viewpoint. I envisage they'll work just the same going forward, able to input into a community board or council as before. And you've seen examples of that today, where we've heard from the Katikati Waihi Beach Residents and Ratepayers Association and the Imokara Residents and Ratepayers Association. Next question was, will additional resource be needed to ensure nothing is lost? So I'd say no, indeed quite the opposite. Council will have the opportunity to hear from everyone, and in light of the possible extra delegations, staff resources would naturally follow to support those broader kaupapa. Next question was feeding back into council processes. At what point do they feed in? So there's a number of opportunities there for community boards. There's targeted workshops with council, there's submissions, there are delegations, there are service requests, there are recommendatory reports, and of course, councillor appointed members of community boards will continue. So they have that feedback through there. There was a mention about ward committees and appointments to that. So this was what was proposed in the 2018-19 representation review. It envisaged appointed members. It was rejected by the community and the Local Government Commission, but it was included in the consultation in the back end as an option that was considered but rejected. So councillors didn't want to go there, but we put it in there as something we had considered. There was another question about the differences between Waihi and Katikati, Waihi Beach and Katikati. I'll come to that in my free flow. There's a question around, what do you get from the 3 community boards that you don't get from 5? So first of all of the district are able to elect a member onto a local community board. There will be a collective understanding of the opportunities that can be leveraged or the issues facing neighbouring communities. There will be a consistency of rating approach and great ability to fund projects locally. And we refer to the possible delegations there. There will be rationalisation of community representation, removing some of the duplication of representation that currently occurs with community forums in trying to provide for a more universal coverage alongside the community boards. So as I said earlier, that we currently, for local representation, we currently have 5 community boards and 3 community forums. So it's 8 bodies that we need to service and look after and organise meetings for, and that will go down to 5. Sorry, down to 3. There will be so better localism in action with greater delegations as previously covered. There was a query around the significant reduction in Makatu in terms of Makatu's representation. And the question was, so how does council hear their voice? Well, they have a guaranteed community board member on the community board. They have, as one member on this one subdivision. They have, through their elected members on the board as per current model, so the ward councillors are elected as per normal, and they can help reflect the Makatu voice. Also through their Ngāti Whakaue representative on the Te Arawa Partnership Forum, the Partnership Forum Te Iu o Te Waka o Te Arawa, and through other local action groups and organisations that go beyond the formal structures resolved through a representation review. We've heard from many groups in Makatu, some of whom have formal relationships with council, some less formal. You've got the Coast Guard and other groups like that. The other question was how many, and the one came at the end there, how many people do the minor ward boundary changes affect? So for that, we have the Katikati Waihi Beach ward will be reduced by 1,220. The population of the Kaimai ward will increase by 690, and the Makatu Te Puke ward will increase by 530. So relatively minor, but just to make the numbers work. It's also worth noting that some of those people were switched back from the 2018-19. So it's back to the future for some of those people. So that was the specific question. So I'll now go through my general right of reply.
Now,
Were there any questions you had on those specific queries you had, Chair?
Yeah. Now there was one question that I asked. There was a statement that was in inverted commas.
Yes, that's in my general right of reply. So I'll come to that. And if you still feel I haven't answered it, then happy to cover it a little bit more.
Thank you.
Okay. So.
Excuse me, your transfer of people from one ward to another, does that comply with the plus or minus 10%?
So that is in order to comply with the plus minus 10%.
Is in order to do so.
Yeah, that is right.
Thank you.
So we've heard from the objectors today, and we've heard how various existing community boards represent unique areas and need their own unique community board. I don't argue against the uniqueness of communities, but there are also ward-wide commonalities, hence the popularity of the wards themselves and councillors representing the entirety of those wards. That is supported by 86% in favour and only 5% against. There are other strong connections that do exist. For example, the 3 marae of Katikati and Waihi Beach are connected by a shared whakapapa and work well together. It is absolutely true that Waihi Beach shares schooling, shopping, community resource centre and employment opportunities with Katikati. But being near the district boundary, it is natural that some travel the other way towards Waihi Town for various activities. So that addresses the point you had there, Chair Duffy, that people in Waihi Beach, they're near the boundary, they can go either way. A significant number go towards Katikati, but by no means all, of course. However, the notion of subdivisions has been almost entirely ignored by those appellants against the final proposal. Only 2 of the 37 objections mentioned community board subdivisions. This is the crucial element of the final proposal that ensures comprehensive localism across the district and that the uniqueness of each community is respected and reflected. Subdivisions would not cause conflict or tension or horse trading, as has been asserted. That is absolutely not how our council works, and this is not how community boards work. And actually, I've sat on both the Katikati and Waihi Beach community boards as an appointed councillor. It is my experience that elected members work collaboratively for the best outcomes for our community. We have heard that community boards have members who are passionate about their communities and of local knowledge. I absolutely agree with this and will take the opportunity to thank them now for all they do. But this local representation backed by local knowledge, while super important, is not going to change much. The Te Puke Community Board currently has 4 members, 4 directly elected members. That will change to 3 members in the subdivision, in its subdivision. Katikati Community Board, the change is the same. 4 current members down to 3 in its subdivision. Makatu, 4 down to 1. That is the exception, and we talked about the reasons for that and the mitigation of ways to mitigate that. Waihi Beach, again, 4 members down to 3, and Omokura, 4 members down to 2. It is also worth noting that the objectors have tended not to suggest any better solutions, either in their original submissions or their objections. Little else has been suggested by the objectors, which implies a view that only the status quo is acceptable. But we know that the status quo doesn't work well. It is iniquitous and excludes large numbers of people. Also, we've had 4 by-elections so far this term. Council's only had 1 because of a death. It does suggest there's something wrong there. Some people in some communities have said they don't want a community board. And that's largely because they are aware of the cost and inefficiency for smaller or rural areas. Others from Pokina, Whakamarama, Tupuna and Paengaroa have all at times asked or considered for a community board because they feel they're missing out. Danny Simpson mentions that things are going well for Waihi Beach Community Board, and I agree with that. She's doing a great job. But to some extent, this is because alongside the Katikati Community Board, they do cover the entire ward. So why deny that to everyone else? Lastly, I would acknowledge that with regards to community representation, the final proposal differed from the initial proposal. But that is because we listened to submissions and sought to improve the proposal. When the proposal is fully explained with careful explanation of the subdivisions, the feedback is often positive, at least in my experience. So that's my right of reply, and I'm happy to take any further questions.
Well done. Thanks, Mayor James. I'm just going to check in with fellow commissioners first before so I'll just go to Commissioner Bigman.
Kia ora. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just your comment there about 4 by-elections already this term, that's within the community boards themselves?
That's correct. So just within the community boards, there's been 1 at council, and I said that was owing to a death.
Right. And the others in the community boards owing to?
Various reasons, but certainly disenchantment would be a big one.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're proposing to go down from 8 boards to 3.
Not quite. I'll just come in there. So 5 boards plus 3 informal community forums.
Yep. And you're proposing to go down to 3 total?
That's correct.
So how many subdivisions do you have?
8 in total.
8
So
in
that's
total.
2 in Katikati Waihi Beach, 3
Yep.
in Kaimai
I
Ward,
missed
and
those, yes.
3 in Makatu Tapuki Ward.
So do you think by going down like that you will be able to achieve fair and effective representation?
I do. Firstly, because as mentioned before, everyone will have a community board they can elect and be part of. And secondly, because the subdivisions represent very well the communities of interest that we have.
Now, you said that community boards were not working well, but we heard from submitters today that there are some areas that don't want community boards rather than the fact that they're not working well. So what's your comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, there will be a variety of views. As I mentioned, many of the areas that are currently not covered by community boards have considered it or asked for it in the past. As I think I mentioned, when they get the reality of how much it costs and what community boards do, they've often said, you know what, we'll just stay with our residents association or have direct contact with council. So at the moment, our community boards reflect our major towns, towns with 5 to 10,000 people. And when you have a smaller community, a smaller rural area of maybe 1 or 2,000 people, it means community boards aren't particularly viable, in my view.
They're usually fairly vociferous, though, those ones, aren't they?
They can be, yes.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you for your time and effort that you put into this review. Yep.
Thank you.
I'll just go back to Commissioner Bigham.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry to be a pain. These questions keep popping into my head. Yeah, you mentioned a whole lot of delegations that are possible under the potential new representation for community boards. So how realistic is that? Because that's a big list. That's a lot of responsibility for, as one of the community boards mentioned, not much pay and not much time. So how realistic is that list, and what is to stop you from doing a lot of those delegations to the existing community boards?
Okay,
that's
so
one question, and then I've got another one after that.
Okay, so yes, it is a long list. I think it forms an initial menu of options. I think staff will need to go back and work through those in more detail and present them to the new council in the new triennium. So that's yes, I suspect you probably wouldn't have all of those, but certainly there's some interesting options there. And again, from my personal point of view, I think that's I would be supportive of them having a good number of those.
Great, thank you. And my next question, yep. My next question is, when you outlined the ways that ratepayers associations, etc., can engage directly with councils, workshop, submissions, delegations, through recommendations, reports.
Those were community boards. That was how community boards can engage.
Okay, great. That was what I was wanting to know. Thank you. No, that's cool. That's cleared that up for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Kilda, thank you very much.
You're
right. So I'm just going to round it out a little bit, Mayor James. You made the observation that there was very little comment about subdivisions, and you're right. Why is that? How am I going to say this? My perception is, based on what we've listened to today, that maybe people just don't understand what that means.
That is probably a fair observation. I think what happened was that the council resolved its final proposal. That those who are passionate about community boards, and indeed who are on community boards now, understandably saw that, oh, my community board's being disestablished, and reacted negatively towards that, and fair enough. What was perhaps lost in the noise of that was that actually there are still going to be community boards. They're still going to cover your area. You're still going to get your local representative in your local subdivision. Now, for the average member of the community, subdivisions of a community board. We're getting into the technical details of representation reviews and the local electoral act and so on. And it's my perception that just got lost. And as I said, when I closed out my my right of reply, when you actually take the time to explain it to people and explain that you've got this community board and you've still got someone you can talk to and advocate up towards council, and who will take your complaint about the blocked culvert or whatever it is, they're much more positive about it. They understand it, but when you just see a headline, disestablished community boards, they're pretty angry.
Okay, help me to understand. The endeavour is to encompass everybody via the 3 community boards. What about those 2 small groups, Matakana and Rangawaia? What's the position there?
Yeah, so they are islands, obviously, and they would find it difficult to connect to either the Katikati Waihi Beach ward or the Kaimai ward. Things like ferry times are not conducive to having meetings and so on. It is a small population. It's about 250 people in the electoral population. They connect pretty well directly through council, through the partnership forum. So the Te Kahu Manawhenua or Taurangamoana. So they have direct involvement there, and also through other kaupapa, such as at the moment we're looking at replacing a Katikati wastewater outfall and treatment system, and they're directly on that advisory group and talking directly to council, because that directly affects them. So we have good relationships there, and through our kaupapa Māori team as well. It's a very high percentage Māori population on the island, and their community network is through their 5 hapu and through their marae.
Okay, thank you for that point. So you made I'm going back to the subdivisions. So you identified the current community board numbers, and then you've identified under the 3 community board model the reduction in the number of representatives in those areas. What is the perceived impact on those reduced numbers of individuals for the same volume of work activity? So are they going to be, is that going to be more challenging for them?
I don't think so. If you look at the total number of community board members, we have currently have 5 boards with 4 people on. It'll change to 3 boards.
Can I stop you? Sorry. Let me just qualify that. So under the new model, sorry to interrupt, but I need to.
Yep.
Because I'm talking about workload, and I'm factoring in the plethora of possible new activities that we're not sure that. So in theory, there's a list of about 8 additional pieces of work that will be loaded in. So my question is, reduced number, greater workload, more activity, how does that work?
Well, I would suggest that a lot of these require a lot of assistance from staff, and so with consultation, going up for community engagement, leading that, staff who set up the table and the tent and produce the material, and then it's a question of the community board members listening and engaging with the community members.
Okay. I've just checked with fellow commissioners. I think we're done.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
So look, Mayor James, I just want to acknowledge the effort that's gone in the background. I respect that today's been a very long session. For those that are still online that submit, I just want to make my acknowledgements to you as well for the way everybody has participated today. It has been very respectful. There are challenges, we get that, and there's processes and protocols, and there's legislation, and at the end of the day, there's 3 people on this screen that are going to have to make our decisions. So the 3 commissioners at the end of the day